sides on the transfer tax issue. Let's start, first of all, by telling people what the tax is. Don, how much the tax? What's it all about?
Well, it would be a tax on any transfer of real property within Multnomah County. That would be on commercial, residential, land, what have you. It's
Okay.
15/100ths of 1%, I believe.
Okay, and in shorthand, you're saying that's $1.50 per thousand.
That is correct.
Okay, Michael, and what would the money go for?
The money would pay for housing, making housing feasible for people who are of no income or very low income, which has been defined in the ordinance as 25% of the median income or lower. And it would make housing available for the homeless and people who have special housing needs.
Approximately who would be helped then? 25% of median. What kind of figures are we talking about?
Oh, I don't recall the exact figure.
Okay, well.
$3,000 a year, something like that.
Okay, fine.
Maximum.
Well, Don, let's start with you then. What's wrong with the tax?
Well, it is selective. We view it as a selective sales tax. It's on one particular item, which is real property. We object to a la carte taxing method, let's say. We would rather see a general tax. We don't view this as being specifically Multnomah County's problem. Our feeling is that this is a statewide problem, and we're concerned about singling out a particular part of the population, which would be the homeowners in Multnomah County, for what we perceive as a statewide problem. Another issue that we've taken to task, we feel that there are no built-in guarantees that this tax will not increase. We see here we have a relatively small fee that is asked to be paid, a tax I should say, and the funding method we think is inconsistent. They feel that it should generate around $2.2 million, give or take, this year, but it's no secret that the real estate community is having a good year. Our concern is that it being a cyclical economy, what happens when the transfers of real property decrease substantially and the need is still there? And so we feel it is discriminatory, we feel that it is inconsistent, and we are opposed to subjecting the property owners with just another burden. We feel that they pay more than their fair share of the tax burden by virtue of owning real property in their property taxes, and we don't think it's appropriate to continue to tax one segment of the population.
Michael, Don raises a good point in that most people think that there should be some rational relationship between what's taxed and what the money is used for. And in some people's minds, this is a specific tax on homeowners that really bears no relationship to the overall problem of helping the homelessness.
Well, let's start. Many of those arguments go in many directions. Let's start with the idea that it's a tax on homeowners. 75% of the money will come from commercial transactions. Holding up the homeowner as the victim of this tax is just a red herring. It's really the commercial community which has most at stake in opposing this and will pay most of the money. The second point is there is at least as much connection between the people who are able to deal in real property and the needs of those who have most urgent a need for real estate, those who have no homes at all. The connection between this tax and its purpose is at least as rational as at least 50% of the taxes we pay.
Do either of you think this is the county taking the coward's way out, that they should have gone to the voters and said, look, let's just pass an overall tax of some kind, as opposed to something like this sort of coming in? Some people have called it sort of a backdoor approach. That is, you don't pay the money, of course, until there's a transfer of property, so it's not something you see on your tax bill every year, for instance.
Well, we particularly perceive it as such. We feel that real estate is an easy target, and we feel that it's been singled out for this because of that very fact. I believe that when the mayor's study on the problem came to light, they recommended two other methods of taxation, and these were not even put on the table as far as we know. They simply went into this mode as a matter of convenience. And therefore, we agree that we think that they haven't studied all the alternatives, and that real estate just stands to be an easy target.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's several things that are quite wrong with that. First of all, just as a matter for the record, it's not the mayor's committee. The Housing Advisory Committee, of which I'm chair, studied for years, literally, a variety of proposals, and we came up with three. This is one. One is a tax increment funding device, which not only was on the table, but has been adopted. It has limitations, which I can discuss, but it can't pay the operating expenses, and it can't pay for housing beyond the urban renewal area in the downtown waterfront urban renewal area. The third device which we proposed was a serial levy, and I agree that a serial levy is an important part of this, and it's unfortunate that the homeless don't have the kind of political clout they need to compete with street lighting and other kinds of measures that there is political support for putting in the general fund. The problem is, like any other tax, if you lead the homeless to compete with the other interests, which are better articulated, which are better funded, which are better supported by interest groups, to compete with the general fund, then the homeless will get left right where they are now, which is out in the cold.
And $1.50 a thousand, in your mind, is not a whole lot of money, right?
Well, compared, for example, to a real estate commission, if it's $90 on this tax, you're paying your realtor $3,600. Mm-hmm. And the real estate industry, by the way, is quite pleased, as I understand it, with Washington's real estate transfer tax, as is the home building industry. In fact, some of the home builders are proposing a statewide transfer tax. And the problem, all of a sudden, is not how inequitable a transfer tax is, but who it helps and who it doesn't help. Now, the Washington County tax, for example, helps developers by having people who buy and sell real property pay for sewers and curbs and infrastructure where it's built to support a new development. Even though they already have curbs and streets and sewers where they live, if they sell a house in an area that has all that, they're contributing towards the profits, really, of a developer who doesn't have to worry about satisfying a local government. So this stuff about what kind of form of tax it is and whether it's fair or not really has nothing to do with this. Taxes are not fair. Taxes are the product of a political, complex community, whether they're property taxes, income taxes, sales taxes, or whatever they are. There is simply no equitable tax out there, and to say that this is inequitable and therefore we shouldn't meet the urgent needs of women and children who are living in cars and living in hallways and sleeping in church basements, it's a very skewed priority, particularly when the argument is made to protect essentially a profit interest among realtors, which is fine. They have every legitimate reason to do that, but that's really what's at stake, not tax equity.
And I'm sure you've got a response to that.
Well, it's interesting to note that if a person pays a commission, it's a voluntary act and that they receive a service for that money. This is involuntary, and I don't see any direct benefit to the property owner. With regard to Michael's contention that 75% of the tax will be paid by commercial interests, I would like to know the source of that statistic. I've never seen that, and I question the credibility.
Go ahead.
The 75% figure came from people who've looked at the transfers over a period of time in Multnomah County. Most of the money that changes hands, not the number of transactions, but most of the money is in the bigger transactions. For example, if you have out-of-state buyers who want to buy an enormous office building downtown, 0.15% of that is going to be an awful lot more money than 0.15% of a $60,000 home. And that's why when you look at the overall picture of cash flow, you're going to find the commercial interest paying the lion's share of this tax.
Mm-hmm. It'll raise more money, but in point of fact, are there not more home sales than there are business sales?
Well, that's right. I would suspect that the number of transactions which would be affected, most of the transactions, just because there are more of them, will be residential. But the dollar bite, the cash flow, will come primarily from the commercial interest, and that's the real driving engine behind the opposition, not the poor, downtrodden homeowner. And again, they don't have to pay the tax if they don't sell the house. All taxes are involuntary, and a lot of the argument about why not refer it to the voters or why not make it part of the general sales tax or impose a general tax which goes to property owners as a whole, that would tax everybody. One of the nicer things about this tax, which makes it more palatable and perhaps more likely of adoption, is that many people will never have to pay this tax, and nobody will have to pay it every year unless they're buying or selling property every year.
Let's break there. We'll be back with more on this issue in just a moment. Stay with us.
Set a course for adventure at the 1989 Portland Boat Show, February 18th through the 26th in the Expo Center.
The 1989 Chevrolet Corsica, all dressed up without running up the price. $11,431 at your Northwest Chevrolet dealers. The 1989 Chevy Corsica, 11,431. Even less with dealer discounts at your Northwest Chevrolet dealers. Corsica, what a buy!
Look, Mom and Dad, your most precious possessions. How well they sleep makes a difference every day of their lives. Your children can have the best. A Sealy Posturepedic, just $99 at Vancouver Furniture. No money down, at least 2 years to pay. Free delivery, Portland to Longview. A lot of Portland stores sell great furniture. We simply sell it for less.
Now is the time to come to Bruce Chevrolet in Hillsborough. We have over 450 cars, trucks, and vans to choose from. Also get up to $1,000 cash back from Chevrolet. Offer ends soon. So come out today. Save on this new 89 Corsica, only $139 per month. Or this new 89 Beretta Coupe, only $149 per month. Drive home this new 89 half-ton pickup, only $145 per month. Save big at Bruce. That's Bruce Chevrolet in Hillsborough, where we try how to be #1.
We're back with Don McCready of Citizens Against the Real Estate Sales Tax and Michael Marcus of the House the Homeless Committee talking about Multnomah County's proposed transfer tax, which county residents will have a chance to vote on in March. Ballots due back, I believe, March 28th. Am I correct
That's
on that?
correct.
Okay, ballots go out March 8th anyway. There is an argument that I have heard that this is going to hurt real estate sales. Do either of you think that that's necessarily true? If this tax is
Well,
passed?
I certainly don't think it's necessarily true. I think it's obviously not so. There have been studies as to what it takes to affect buying and selling decisions, and roughly, at least you have to hit a full percent, and the better argument is that you need 1.5% or so before you would affect the volume of transactions. Again, compared to, this is 1/40th the typical real estate commission. So if this hurts real estate sales, what is the impact of charging a 6% commission?
Yeah, that's a pretty good argument. $90 on the average home sort of a thing isn't an awful lot of money. Do you accept that?
I don't accept it at all. Once again, it appears that we're taking a stance that the realtors are the only ones that are objectionable to this. You have the Portland Chamber of Commerce, you have the Apartment Builders and Owners, the Builders and Owners Association. You have a number of people that are not in the residential sales that are involved in this particular fight. And again, a commission is 1, negotiable, and 2, voluntary. It's a free market, and if a person wants to do it himself or herself, they're more than welcome to do that. Again, Michael talks about a 1% fee in order to make a difference. What guarantee do we have that it's not going to be 2 or 3% next year? There's no cap built into this proposal, and it doesn't take a vote of the people. We're trying to get the thing. They're trying to get the thing across, but after that, we perceive it as a loose cannon. We don't see any guarantees that it's not going to be increased again and again. We would like to have some type of a comfort zone here, which we do not perceive.
Mm-hmm. The fact that Chamber of Commerce is against it and our apartment builders and the like, those are the people that are most likely to have to pay this tax, right? It's fairly logical that they would be against it.
Well, now I don't know about that because, you know, you seem to be singling out the realtors organization. I'm not going to pay this tax unless I buy or sell. I don't think it's going to affect my pocketbook when I'm dealing with other customers. And the same with people who are renting apartments and what have you in the Chamber of Commerce. I don't know that it's necessarily going to come out of their pockets unless they're a principal to the transaction, either a purchaser or a buyer. So therefore, I don't see that particular end of it. What we are concerned about is, I think the Chamber's concern would be that if a business were to move to the Multnomah County area, would they move to Multnomah County or would they choose Clackamas County, which is doing extremely well right now, which does not have this transfer tax? If it would be $60,000, $70,000, $100,000 difference, I guess I would question which way these owners would jump, whether it would benefit Multnomah County to have this tax or not have this tax. I think they would probably go to the area that has less of a burden. Mm-hmm. Our taxes in the county itself are higher than our surrounding counties overall, and this just increases it.
Michael, the other side of that coin is that many Oregonians feel they're taxed enough, that enough is enough. There is always a need out there, no matter how much tax is raised, for the homeless, the poor, the needy, and that they are simply tired of paying more taxes, and that this is not terribly popular in some quarters, at least, with them. What would you tell those people?
I'd tell those people, look, these homeless are going to cost you money one way or another. If the more that you keep families from getting shelter, the harder it is for them to become independent of welfare. The more likely they are to cause a stress on all sorts of social services and even crime prevention and law enforcement services, because homelessness does not contribute to the social health of the people who are homeless or the community they live in. In fact, the argument can be made that this is really a very pro-economic development measure, because it enables people who need to get back into the labor force, who need to become productive members of society, and who need to stop being a drain on the taxpayers because of their need for social services, to get stabilized, to get their lives in order, and to get back to work. But I'd like to address the economic development issue more directly. Washington County has a transfer tax, and I haven't heard any of the groups who oppose this one have any complaint about the Washington County tax. Washington County is economically the healthiest county in the state. Maine has a transfer tax, which it uses for housing purposes, and the same kind of coalition that opposes this tax here opposed that tax there when it was originally proposed. Several years of experience, however, have convinced the people in Maine that that tax assists all of the people who originally opposed it. And in fact, when the legislature went to repeal that tax, the same coalition that opposed it in the first place promoted it and protected it, because it leveraged millions of dollars of money from other sources. It added to the growth of the real estate industry and construction and all of the things that helped Maine get back on its feet. The real estate transfer tax in Maine is now popular with the realtors and the home builders.
What did that transfer tax, what was the money used for to
It was used for housing for a wider range than our tax is designed, so that it covered a broader range of, and covers broader range of income groups, but it includes low-income housing.
I see. What specifically would this money go for once it's raised?
All right. One of the most urgent needs is, I mentioned that we had 3 devices. One of them is in place, and it is the Tax Increment Device, which PDC administers in the waterfront downtown urban renewal area. And the one thing missing from that package is operating expenses. Tax increment dollars can only fund bricks and mortar. In order to make the projects which private and public nonprofit developers can build with this money, in order to make those projects work for homeless people, operating expenses are necessary. Outside the urban renewal area, the need is both for operating expenses and for rehabilitation, so that vacant and abandoned housing, for example, can be made into viable housing projects for people who need housing. Those are in fact, the ordinance limits the use of the money. It cannot be used to acquire housing. It cannot be used to fund social service case management services, and part of the reason for that is we focused on the need for housing. The state and the federal government have traditionally been the sources of social service dollars. What we need locally is housing dollars for people who can't support a debt service, people who are homeless and have special needs and are extremely low income.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there's a potential that this might actually help the housing industry?
Well, there's always that potential, but we don't perceive it as such.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're out of time. Gentlemen, thanks very much. That is all the time we have. Thanks for watching. Again, the ballots go out March 8th. They're due back March 28th. Vote. Good night.